So I've just finished the second part called Transit, which is going to be published in the UK in September, I think. I think that the idea of continuing, it wasn't necessarily there at the very beginning. It was really once I had established the form, because outline is a new form for me. But I think it's also, I tried to, break a little bit of new ground, which in any writing project is the important thing. And I guess while I was writing outline, I began to realise that this strange form, had more possibilities, that I could say other things in it, and I wanted to say other things in it. And the structure of outline, it was very much this enclosed period of time, and the whole nature of that period of time was that it was temporary. She was in a place for a few days, and then she, at the end of that she had to leave. So the question of sort of what could come next, because obviously it would have to be in some new place and have some different meaning. So I spent a lot of time thinking about that, and about another episode, location, period. So it's really that sort of combination of a short period of time and a place. And I could see that as a vehicle for some other things that I wanted to say. So in the new book, I have the same invisible person, but at home in London, because that seemed to be the next challenge, was actually to witness her in her own world and to see what that looked like. So that's what I've done.
And if she's so far away from her and from home?
Yes, yeah.
In London?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So arranging that, really, I suppose it was just sort of going through the mirror and looking at it from the other side, looking at that alienation from a different perspective.
And so there will be a third one?
There'll be a third one, yeah.
Okay.
Which I suppose I feel the need to conclude, because the outline asks a lot of questions. It opens up some ideas that I explore a bit more, but then in the end there has to be a destination. Maybe this is a little element of things that's lost in translation, because I very carefully set up echoes in the book, and the main place where that happens is at the end, in the last chapter, where another woman writer, who really is because the whole book is a series of mirrors, but at the end she meets somebody who she can see herself in, more clearly, and it's this person who says that talking to others and hearing the story of who they were was a form of self-description by elimination, and that the outline being an idea of self as something undefined within itself, and defined only by what is outside itself and by what other people say about themselves. And I guess that idea for me is intrinsic to femininity. I'm trying to say something about the way a woman might evolve a self that is really a series of exterior definitions, and that if she loses those, because the sort of predicament of the narrator in the book is loss, it's that she's moved outside of ways in which she might be seen by others, normally as a wife or a mother, or and so she's a sort of undefined thing. And I guess the word outline also very much relates to writing and to a particular kind of writing. The book is very much not about plot and narrative, and the whole, the essence of the book is that it dispenses with those things. A lot happens.
Yeah,
when people say nothing really happens, I think, well, whatever happens to you that's more exciting than that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a plot and a circle and
yeah. But as I say, people were very addicted to narrative and to, I suppose, narrative as a fantasized story of life. So, I mean, I think what's strange for people in outline is that linear time, which is the thing that makes you keep turning pages, it doesn't quite work like that in the book. You keep being stopped and made to go down rather than along. So I think for some, it takes a bit of getting used to. But yeah. I did. I thought, what would happen if you didn't give the reader a disguise, a place to live in the book where they could essentially assume the identity of somebody else and not really experience the text. I realised how many surface values are playing out in physical descriptions of people, in the politics of woman or man, attractive or not, young or old, what class this person is. Doing away with all of those things was, well, it means the book's quite short. It was very interesting. It was a discipline, in a way, for me to write it. And while I was writing it, I thought, can I expect anyone reading it to have that discipline that I'm willing to submit to it? But is anybody else? So no, I did realise that it was quite an exposing place to put a reader. They can't sort of cover themselves up or feel comfortable, particularly. I mean, for me, everything about a novel has to happen in the sentences, and I can't really start writing the sentences until I've completely understood the thing that I'm trying to do. And at the beginning, writing this book, sometimes I would try and write the wrong sentences, and I couldn't finish them. So that was a sort of really interesting, because they just didn't. I was doing something wrong. I was going back into materialistic writing and information-based writing, and I just couldn't do it. So it was very interesting how me having conceived of this thing, it then taught me how to write it. I mean, what I felt when I did, I knew I had done a sentence right when there was lots of silence around the thing I'd written, and that was really what I wanted, was to create a big unstated hinterland around the small thing that was stated, because the thing that I've tired of in writing and in reading is the word value and the material value being endlessly indexed to each other. And I think how much compiling and accounting and numbering and listing do we need to go in for? How many more times do we need to describe experience as a linear accumulation of material. Can you not say, I mean, I was thinking about this on the train over, so I've left my children at home, and that's quite stressful for sort of, I mean, that's an experience that people know very well, and I thought, well, you could say, I went away to another country, and when I came back, everyone was fine. Mm-hmm. I went away to another country, and when I came back, things had fallen apart. And that's enough, actually. I thought, because in the end, the reader has to do something with their own experience, and they have to use it. Just more and more and more descriptions of the things that they already know is pointless. So I think that really was my aim. I guess that little feeling of things being constructed, again, to create that slight distance from reality. The things that are familiar to her in her world, Ryan, the teacher, that's ultimate reality. That's, absolutely no symbolism in that. It's that sort of awful pedestrian familiarity where he doesn't even respect her enough to really take any notice of her. So once she's in the world of creativity, which is the writing class, there's a phrase in the book where she's talking about her children and how they used to have this shared world of imagination, and suddenly they got divorced. And she uses the phrase "the magic river," and that her contact with that idea, the idea of the magic river, is it's a very intermittent, but you begin to see it in this creative writing class. There's a feeling of suspension, I suppose, of symbolism that she confers, and I think that's how you can begin to get the feeling that she's writing the book, she's writing the stories, and that was the great challenge, was to find a form that could express silence and nothingness, because those were the characteristics of the thing that I'm describing. Yeah. I mean, one of the criticisms that I feared, and I think, maybe I've had that criticism a couple of times, is, everybody in the book sounds the same. And I thought, well, yes, that's kind of the point. If you don't understand that, then maybe you're not going to enjoy it. I wonder how much it is true that when people, because I'm sort of suggesting this, I suppose, that what people hear when others speak, when others narrate their lives, what they hear and retain and incorporate into their own story of themselves is are the things that they recognise, and they might recognise them because it's what they're frightened of. For instance, I know women who absolutely, come alive when someone tells a story of, a child being hurt, for instance, or a husband being unfaithful, or, even though those things haven't actually happened to them, they are their fears, and that's what they'll be listening to in what people say. And when it's a man talking about the politics at the office, they won't internalise it in the same way. Perhaps to become truly a higher order of human being, you would have to be able to hear everything, and in everything find a relationship to your own experience. But yeah, at this sort of level, what she's doing is drawing towards her things that describe her. I think particularly for people who try to live in language, there's several bits in the book, particularly there's a passage where the woman is talking about D.H. Lawrence and saying, I just want to live in a D.H. Lawrence book, and then feeling suddenly, as soon as she had sort of realised that she couldn't be helped by him anymore. And that to me is possibly the most tragic moment in the whole novel, because I think, well, it's true that you have to be so careful with this world of representation and of narrative, and it's even people who who create realities at the highest level, like D.H. Lawrence, that can become a refuge. What this book is saying so clearly is, I'm not going to create a refuge for you, reader. So the woman who says that she's not sure whether things have happened to her or somebody else, and then she tells the story of her dog, which very much did happen to her. So that to me is one version of the writerly persona. The person who says, I can't write, I've got nothing to write, and doesn't even really know. It's a complete sort of failure of surface identity, and that's something that I feel very close to. I sort of relate to that, and the reality of memory and personal experience actually being the value. Because even people who busily construct homes are often busily constructing a prison, and really, I mean, I suppose ultimately the subject of the book is empathy and the value of empathy. At the end of all of this, it is. I mean, it's something that I said in Aftermath, that this was the thing the Greeks understood, that suffering, loss, destruction, it brings people out of their houses. It brings them in sympathy to you, and the people coming out of their houses to welcome, the soldiers coming home from war. I mean, that's a very classical image, and that is the location of this book. And I suppose one reason to continue on this journey is to find out what the post-empathetic world looks like, what the it could have been set in France, in Paris. It could have been set in Berlin. But as you say, the combination of factors. Partly because one of the book's roots is in the Odyssey, and that very primary idea of narrative as a post-traumatic sort of relieving mechanism, that you go through these terrible things and then you go and tell someone about them. And as you say, the pre-Christian concept of tragedy and of family and democracy and justice, those ideas are, I have far more, or I think the divorce world finds far more expression and analogy in those worlds. I guess I wanted a place that was, as you say, wobbling in crisis, but also that was outside the language economy of Northern Europe. And there's so much that's shared between France and England, for instance, around language, but a whole world of commerce and computers and music, and so that feeling of stepping into a slightly different world, an older world, a bloodier world. I'm quite familiar with Athens, and years ago I was there with my very nice publisher, and I remembered him saying, he was talking about how these various European sort of health and safety measures people had tried to, like wearing your seatbelt or not smoking in restaurants, and that the Greeks had been affronted because for them death, even if it's silly, even if it's just not wearing your seatbelt or not caring about smoking, but having death as a constant, as an option, as a risk, as a possibility, was their understanding of life. Functioned around that tension, and so I wanted that feeling, which I don't particularly sort of express anywhere, but just that feeling of a slightly different set of values about personal survival and personal importance, and I wanted it to be hot as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and she tries to get on a boat with a man and go out into that ocean, and all she thinks is, I could just keep swimming and never come back, and I don't care. So that's a very bleak realisation that and it's in that place that she says, I don't ever want to have a relationship with anyone ever again, and out on that ocean. Well, it's I suppose part of what I'm describing is life as an evolution, and the Angeliki person, the writer who can't stop talking, and that's the sort of expansive phase, the political phase, the materialistic phase, the self as a set of material politics. The woman who's realising that she can find autonomy, that she can express herself, that she can, that's one level of being, it's one phase of evolution, and the Fae person is way beyond that. She's out of that. She's back into silence and into a much bigger, bleaker aloneness, and she has this conversation with her nice friend Paniotis, and he says the interesting people are like islands. You have to go and visit them. You just sort of meet them in the street, and that feeling of life becoming that sort of landscape where what happens to you is no longer quite so important as what you design and engineer, and in a way it's a Jungian idea as well, that the first bit of life is all about the drama of relationships and the false ending of that, and we all know the Jane Austen novel ends with and they got married and goodbye. So it's really after that, and what Jung says is, okay, fine, have a relationship, but at some point it'll end, and then who are you? What are you? What are you here for? What are you going to do? And you're on your own, and that quest to understand things through yourself rather than through other people is, you know, the challenge, I guess.
Yeah.
I was either never going to write anything again, or I was going to write something new. The very last thing I was going to do was go backwards.
Yeah.
So, well, I started with the proposition that okay, write a book about silence, but there has to be a book and there has to be a text. I was very interested in the whole idea of creative writing. What is this writing? You know, what is this communal writing? The writer, me, or, you know, someone like me, writing feels like a stigma, it feels like a wound, it feels like an affliction. These people are not afflicted or stigmatised, and this was something I'd thought about a lot of what is this medium. So in the book, writing is when they talk, that's writing. Somebody is writing this book. Is it them? That's sort of the issue. So the thing that I increasingly came to feel about creative writing and about the generalised desire to write, you know, language is democratic, it's free, and you know, people, you might get one person in 100 who sits there and says, instead of saying I want to write a novel, they say I really want to play Beethoven's Fourth Violin Concerto in the Royal Albert Hall, and you think, oh, well, okay, you're going to have to learn to play the violin, and then, you know, which is something that I could just as easily say to the person who says, oh, I really want to write a novel. I think, well, you know, do you have any idea how technically difficult that is? But and no is the answer. Language, as I say, is free. It's available to anybody. So, and going with that, it's not only free and available, but it is something that humans understand, and they understand literary form. So when a person speaks, when they're speaking about themselves, and sometimes if they've become rather good at speaking, they can do this about places and people, and you know, they can tell a very good story. You absolutely see how their grasp of form is guiding the way they're telling the story, and that they've probably told the story before, and they've realised, like any writer does, that if you leave out that bit and put in that bit, everybody will laugh, or that staying too long, concentrating too long on this bit of the story ruins it, and people get bored and their attention, you know. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with that idea that everyone's a writer, except the person who's totally silent and doesn't say anything and apparently doesn't write anything, who is the stigmatised artist person. And that would have to be the fabric of the book. And the important point is that she is always present. She's always witnessing. She occasionally says that you have to put an animal in it. It has to involve something you actually personally experienced on your way to this room, just to keep them technically sort of in the right place, and so then they give her what she wants, and even in her conversations with people, she at certain points asks the question that will send things into the right direction, so that the story can continue. Anyway, it was fun. It was quite fun, that aspect of things. But I think that either you can reach a point in your life, or culture reaches a point in its life similarly, where reading a novel becomes a patronising act. I think there is a point at which fiction ceases to have meaning. As I say, it becomes gratuitous, it becomes a reflection of what you already know. Isn't that the thing that we all fear? You know, we become 50, we become 60, and we stop really living. We become just a repeat of what we already are. We're just a record going round and round and round. And then you know, change or die. And form is a possibility of change. You know, you can. It's all very well to say the novel is, you know, blah, dead, dismantle it, but are you going to live anymore? You know, are you going to actually create something new? And if you're going to create something new, it has to be well, it has to have its own reality. Whatever, you know, however enduring or big or small that reality is, it does have to have reality. So, and I mean, you know, maybe other people don't see that you've done something. It's nice that you do see that. But for me, to be able to continue, either, as I say, either I was never going to write anything again, or I was going to write that. Well, and I think what that story tells you is a story of it taking a very long time to become free. And in the new book I've written, the narrator says, towards the end of the book, she says one of the first things that actually is quite defining, and she says, I feel like I was born imprisoned in a block of stone, and that it's been an obligation and a necessity, you know, that has been my life's work, to try and chisel my way out of it. And I would have given up if it didn't feel so uncomfortable to be in here. I would have given up ages ago, but, you know. So that's really the story that I'm trying to tell. And the place that I'm trying to get to is maybe a freedom from that story.
That's a good conclusion. Thank you.